Now, I guess one of the tasks that I undertake in these kinds of sessions is to bring 9/11 into a much broader context, because it could be very easy for people who are for the first time becoming politically active and who are outraged about the atrocity of 9/11 and government malfeasance and cover-up and all the rest of that, to see 9/11 as standing alone. Well, it is a seminal issue. In our lifetime, maybe the most important seminal issue, no question about it. But you have to see it in a total context of governmental operation. Understand, this is not the first time that government or governments try to put people under stress and anxiety and justify oppression where they deprive liberty and deny a constitutional, even its very existence in some instances. This is not the first time that's happened, and it's not the first time that it's been attempted to be happened. Cynthia mentioned Northwoods. Many of you may know what Northwoods is. Some of you may not know what Northwoods is. Northwoods, of course, was Admiral Lemnitzer's grand plan to have United States Special Forces operatives dressed as and impersonating Cubans in a variety of city streets and selectively killing Americans to justify the invasion of Cuba. That was in 1959. Lemnitzer worked that plan up under John Foster Dulles. Well, of course, it was put on Kennedy's desk, and when he was elected, and he said, "What are these guys, nuts? Are they crazy? What's going on with these idiots?" And of course, Kennedy threw it into threw that plan into the wastepaper basket. Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is another example, I think, of a situation where there was $3 billion locked in counterterrorism legislation, had been locked there for a period of time, had been blocked, had not been allocated. Oklahoma City bombing takes place, the building comes down, all that money gets released, and there are jobs for the boys and money for the well-connected and the cronies as a result of that. You know, McVeigh blew the front off that building with his fertilizer, and he thought he did it. He thought that he actually did it. When I was in London, somebody sent me this these rolled up sheets of paper, and I assumed when I looked at it that it was being sent to me by a member of the Corps of Engineers who had a conscience and who was concerned and who had participated in the wiring. Because when I went through it, it was the wiring plans for that building. And even today, as time lapses, people will come forward and say, "Yes, you know, I remember engineers running in there to take out unexploded bombs." So that was another example. World Trade Center 93, I mean, the FBI organized that whole operation. That's not even denied now. And they even said to the guys they entrapped, "Don't worry, these are not real bombs." So governments do these things, don't they? In Russia, I was in Moscow around the time that the apartment buildings, I don't know if you recall that, there were apartment buildings blown up. And the word immediately went out from the Kremlin that it were the Chechens. And they used that as a means and as a rationale for invading Chechnya and doing what they have done to the Chechen people and to what was once a formidable city, Grozny, just destroying it. And at that point in time, friends of mine there said very clearly, this is an intelligence operation, this is an inside job, and they're about this in order to get into Chechnya and to use it for that purpose. There is the Berlin Disco. I mean, the Berlin Disco was laid at Gaddafi's door, like many things are laid at Gaddafi's door. We change scapegoats, don't we, from decade to decade. And of course, Gaddafi has been a major scapegoat, and so Berlin Disco was laid at his door. But the German authorities had no hard evidence at all that the Libyans were involved. And that was used as a reason for the shelling, the missile shelling of Gaddafi's home in Tripoli, and the killing of his 4-year-old daughter. When I went to Libya with President Chavez, we went through that demolished residence of Gaddafi's, and he hadn't touched a slab of cement. He left it just exactly the way it was following the bombardment and the loss of his daughter. So we have those situations, and in an imperialist way, what do we need to look at? We stole half of Mexico, didn't we? Huh? We had Polk found a reason to justify the invasion of Mexico, and voila, we have Arizona and New Mexico, Texas, good parts of Southern California, and the Mexicans lost half of their country. We did the same thing with rationalized the taking of Cuba in 1898, the ejection of the Spanish in the Spanish-American War, and then we were going to return it. We're going to leave. One petty dictator after another gets put in there and supported and sustained by us until, of course, Fidel comes down from the Sierra Maestra and changes that whole scenario. But how much later? 59 years later, almost 60 years later, did he do that? Well, we've done that. We've done that to the Hawaiians as well. There is a serious problem historically in this country about the use of imperialism and the use of political assassinations and the use of overthrows, one after another. That's all kept from you in school. It's kept from us in school. I grew up never hearing about any of these things. I'm sure that most of you shared that experience. We have to somehow learn about it on our own eventually. So we have supported oppressive tyrants throughout this hemisphere. Some of the worst in Central and South America. Argentina and Chile are particularly bad horror stories, but that's all pre-Chavez. Chavez is having an impact on the culture of that continent now. Yes. Well, there's so much righteous indignation on the part of these, justifiably on the part of these people. We overthrow Mossadegh, who's a secular leader, elected leader in Iran. A marvelous guy, but a nationalist, and he wants the Iranian people to have the benefit of Iranian oil. So Anglo-American oil has got to leave. So we overthrow Mossadegh. We get him out and we put the Shah in, because now he'll make the proper deals in terms of the oil and energy interests. Then we go in the next year to Guatemala, had elected president, Joaquim Arbenz, and we do the same thing for Arbenz. We overthrow him. And Guatemala has been a nightmare, hasn't it? Ever since. To this day, it's a nightmare. Tomorrow, Molina may be elected president. He was trained at the School of the Americas. He's an American-trained fascist torturer and murderer who now may be elected president once again in Guatemala. So this horrific story goes on and on and on. We support in every way, subsidize in every way, transnational corporations, particularly the agro corporations, send them into the hemisphere, let them destroy the economy, the agricultural economy of these people, literally destroy it, so that the farmers and their children have to move into the cities and try to find fabricating or other kinds of jobs because they can't compete with American products that are being imported to places like Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. So we destroy their economies, and then when they try to come north to find jobs to feed their families, we have this outrage about these immigrants trying to come here illegally, and that double standard is just incredible. It's incredible. So 9/11 relates to all of these things. 9/11 relates to the destruction of the working class in this country. It relates to internal economic problems that are rising faster than the masters here might want them to. And through radicalizing and making people aware of the 9/11 issue, I think it's maybe very well in line for that swath to be cut quite away. We've incarcerated, how many? Over 2 million now, isn't that right, Cynthia? Over 2 million people. Large percentages, of course, are black and Hispanic. Overwhelming, what is it now, over 90%, I suppose, are on drug-related charges. Medical problems by the rest of the world, but criminalized in the United States. And yet the United States has been historically the largest drug-dealing, drug-trading operation on the planet, in the history of the planet. How little do we recall, remember Mena, Arkansas, and you remember, and Bill Clinton as governor of Arkansas welcoming George Bush's aid to make the deals with respect to the drugs that were smuggled illegally into Mena and then picked up by the Bloods and the Crips and the various gangs and taken to the streets of American cities and sold with 50% of the profit going for agency covert operations and 50% remaining with the gangs. America's had an ongoing large drug dealing operation of this sort, and look what we do to the characters who get pushed into that business in the streets and then incarcerated. In the southern states, we have perpetuated slavery, or at least indentured service, haven't we? Because what happens down there when you get sent to prison, or even to the county jails? I've spent time visiting a number of county jails and prisons in the South, and they rent that labor out. And it goes out, as it always went out to some of the plantations. They may be owned by corporations now rather than individuals, but they rent it out. It goes there. Those guys go out, they work every single day. They have no say about this. So if they're not slaves because they're not physically owned, they're at least indentured servants because they are in fact owned and they have a servitude to the state, on behalf of the state. So that's not talked about. Not only are these places hellholes, but even their labor is not talked about and how that produces the kind of income that it does. So I think 9/11 exists in that context. It exists in the context of the whole range of executive orders that this president has signed. What you're doing here tonight, and what your brothers and sisters in California picketing against Chevron may be doing tomorrow, or were doing last week, is a felony. It could be called a felony. They could arbitrarily pick you up, as they could pick up those people, because there is a relationship, particularly in terms of the Chevron people, to the economic reconstruction of Iraq. And if you do anything that harms the economic reconstruction efforts of Iraq, like stopping Chevron, which is a major bidder for the privatization of Iraqi oil, if you try to stop that, you are interfering with the reconstruction of that country. That's a felony. They can pick you up. They will take your house. They will take your cars. They will take all of your assets. And goodness knows what they will then do to you. That is where we can additional over 600 facilities that qualify presently for refurbishment for the same purpose. And the slight rationale is, well, if we get a huge influx of thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants, we got to have some place to put them. So we're going to build these camps in strategic areas of the country. Well, how many thousands of illegal immigrants are going to end up in Maine, are going to end up in Indiana, are going to end up in this state, Connecticut? Every state is targeted for these places. So that immediately begins to, even the most skeptical say, well, what's that all about? And if KBR has a $385 million contract as we sit here, you can bet the cost overruns on that will soon appear as they go on. Well,